Hey everyone, it's Kyle here, and in this week's video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to get started with using LDCAD. LEGO Digital Designer, or LDD, is probably the most well-known LEGO CAD software out there. However, it has its limitations. Anyone who's used it has probably run into issues with it not being powerful enough or being too restrictive with placements of elements, or maybe it's just not up to date with the latest elements ever since LEGO stopped supporting it a while back. LDCAD is an independent third-party software that's much more powerful than LDD, and it opens a lot more gateways for you to explore. It allows you more element placements and a lot more freedom to build. It also is the most up-to-date with all of the new LEGO elements because it uses the LDraw parts library. Finally, it also allows a stepping stone to make LEGO quality building instructions for your models, which is always a really awesome tool. So today I'm going to be showing you the very basics that you need to get started with using LDCAD, and even how to adapt the models that you have in LDD into LDCAD models. The procedure for installing LDCAD on your computer is a little bit involved, so I'll walk you through that step by step. Before we even start thinking about LDCAD, we need to install the LDraw parts library on our computer, because this is what LDCAD uses to build the models. So you're going to open up your browser and go to this URL. This is ldraw.org/blah blah blah whatever, and right here is what we're interested in. This is download LDraw 1801.exe. This is the Windows installer for the complete LDraw library, and this is what you're going to download if you don't already have the LDraw parts on your computer. So allow that to download, and then once the installer is ready, you can open it, and it's going to run its course to install the parts library onto your computer. Now this step is important. This is where you choose where you want your parts library to be installed. By default, it's choosing my downloads folder, but I don't really want it to go there because I'm going to need to remember that directory later on when we refer back to it. So what I'm going to do is instead I'm going to install my LDraw parts library in my C drive under my program files folder. And it's important that you remember where you save it. Save it in a permanent and memorable location, because we need to later tell LDCAD where to find this parts library. So after you've selected a good place for it, select OK, select Next. You can leave all this as is. This will just install everything onto your computer, and then we'll go to Install, and that'll run its course. As soon as the parts library finishes installing, the next website we're going to go to is melkert.net/LDCAD, and this is where we're going to download the actual LDCAD application. So come over here to this home column, click on download, and it's going to take us to the download page for our application. There are a whole bunch of different versions offered, but you can just go right ahead and choose the most recent version. So at the time of this video, it's from March 2018. You have the option of either Windows or Linux, and depending on your operating system, for most people you're going to want the Windows Setup installer. You don't really need to worry about the archive. It explains what the difference between setup and archive is up here. But for my application, and most likely for your application, you're going to want the setup version of the Windows installer. So after clicking on that, it's going to download the installer, and then click on it when it's done, and it's going to ask for permission. It's also going to ask you where you want to install the application itself. By default, it wants to go to your C drive and then your program files, and that works just fine, so you could just install that there. And it's only going to take a few seconds, and as soon as you see setup completed, you know that it's finished, and you can just click close. Now we're going to find the application on our computer in our program files. So I already browsed to my C drive and my program files, and you can come down here. You can see the LDraw library, which we installed just a minute ago, and now we have the LDCAD folder. We'll open this up and we'll find the application in here. So I'll click on it and I'll create a shortcut so I can access it from my desktop. So it's just going to ask me that. Now we have a shortcut on my desktop. Double clicking that will open up the LDCAD software. Usually when you open up your software for the first time, it'll bring you to a dialog which asks you to select the directory where you saved your LDraw parts library. Now this didn't ask me for that dialog, so if it doesn't give you that dialog, I'll show you how to select the LDraw parts library so you can get to building. So as you can see, it doesn't have the LDraw parts in it yet because it doesn't have the elements loaded, so it just looks like a field of a whole bunch of red plus signs. So in order to select the LDraw parts library, you're going to go up to Preferences, go to LDraw, search library paths, and then we're going to make a new one. So we're going to click it, go to Browse, and we're going to go to where I saved the parts library. So in my C drive, Program Files, LDraw, and then just select that folder. And then you're going to click on it, make it the official library, and then once that's all done, click Accept. Now nothing's going to happen right now because you need to close the software and give it a chance to update it. So after you close it, you can open that right up again, and we'll open up the Falcon, and it loads all of the elements and the parts, and now we have a completed model. Let's go over some of the basic tools that you'll need to make your own models. So I'm going to go to New Model here, and this allows you to type in the metadata for your new model. You don't really need to worry about this if you don't really care. So I'll just type something in, for example, click Accept. This you don't have to worry about. And now we have a blank slate with which we could use to start building. So I'm just going to go all the way up. This right here is the first thing that you're going to want to look at. This is the parts library, and the very first layer of the parts library gives you a bunch of different options for sorting. So you have sort by function, sort by category, part listings of Lego sets, you have a search. And this is ways that you can keep yourself organized. Now I personally think this first one, which is library sorted by function, is the easiest to use because it lets us go directly to Technic parts. So you can click on that again, and now it brings us a whole bunch of different categories of Technic parts. Things like Technic axles, Technic beams and lift arms, bricks, connectors and pins, gears, etc. And it keeps going, and there's a whole bunch of different things. So this is where you would find all of the MINDSTORMS parts. And something you should also notice, if you haven't noticed already, is that when I hover over something with my mouse, it's going to display information down here in this bar. So if I hover over this, it's going to display MINDSTORM in the bottom. Anyway, let's start. We'll take out a piece. So if you want to select the color, you're going to use this up here, which is the color wheel. So you can choose any number of colors, so chrome pink. This is actually a pretty hideous color. Let's not choose that. You can choose metallic gold, metallic black, any number of colors is available. So let's just go back to red. And this right here is the history of all of the different colors that you've used in your project. And these are all of the different working colors, so you can also choose from your history. But I just want to work with red right now, so I'm going to choose an element. I'm going to just choose your basic 2-module Lego axle and take it out like that. So this is the axle. It's selected right now, so we can learn how to move and manipulate it. So there are some important keyboard shortcuts that you're going to want to use. So if you click on the M key, this is going to put the axle in move mode, and you can use the arrow keys to move it around, and this will allow you to move it in 2 dimensions. Next, you're going to want to learn the F, S, and T keys, and this moves the movement compass, which is what we're using to move the element, around to the 3 different axes that allow you to move your element in different dimensions. Now you saw before that we can only move it in these 2 different dimensions. So now if we press, for example, the F key, we can move it in that extra dimension that we were missing before. We can also press the T for top, and we can move it around like that. So I've showed you how the move function works using the arrow keys on your keyboard. You can also scroll over with your mouse and click and drag the piece. And again, you can manipulate that in a bunch of different dimensions by pressing the F, S, and T keys for front, side, and top, respectively. Another way you can move it is if you go over here, you can see the X, Y, Z position of your piece, and you can manually type in a part position. So right now this is at -60. I can type in 0, click accept, and it's going to move the part to that position. If you want to move your view, you can click and drag, and I'll show you a different way to move your view in just a second. So we've already gone over moving the piece. You can also click the R key now, and this will enter rotate mode, and you can use the arrow keys to rotate this around, or you can click and drag again with the move, and you can rotate it like that. Right now it's set in 15-degree increments, and I'll show you how to change that in just a moment. And you can use the T, S, and F keys to rotate the piece in a few different dimensions. So that's the rotate tool. Now I want to explain this in the bottom left corner here, which is really important because it has a lot of your controls at a glance. So you can use this when you click and drag. You can move around the model you're building. This will move it in one dimension, so left and right dimension. This will move in another dimension, and you can rotate and spin, whatever. This is not just your view controls, however. There's a lot of things that you can toggle on and off from here. For example, if you go to the bottom right corner, you see we're in rotation mode, and it says that right here. If you click on this, now it puts us back in move mode. And then you can also, again, control that with the keyboard keys. This, again in the bottom right corner, is the perspective type for your rotation. By default, it's on a special gimbal type rotation. It's really hard to understand without actually trying in the software. I could try to explain, but you're really not going to get a sense of how it works through the video. It's just something you're going to have to experience yourself in the software. But with this rotation perspective, you imagine your entire model is inside of one giant gimbal that's moving around, rotating on all three axes. It's a little bit difficult to get used to, but it's very powerful, and so it's encouraged that you try to get the hang of it. However, if you click on this, it's going to switch it and put you into spin mode. So now it's going to spin around in the three Cartesian axes, and this is more of probably what you're going to be used to from something like LDD or Lego Digital Designer. Now remember, before we were using the F, S, and T keys to move around the movement compass. You can also see that when we move the piece around, the compass will automatically change depending on where our perspective is with the part's orientation, and you can manually override it with the F, S, and T keys if you wish. Moving back over here, there are a few more things we can do. Is right now it's in 3D mode. If you click this, it's going to put it in 2D mode, which makes it look like an orthographic projection, so something like a blueprint. So most of the time you're going to spend in 3D mode, but you can also change this to 2D mode, and you can rotate it like this using the compass over here again. So I'll put this back in 3D mode. I want to show you another keyboard shortcut. Right now this is approximately centered in our view, but I'm going to use this again to move it. So I'm just going to type in a bunch of random numbers to move it somewhere else. And as you can see, now it's off to the side. So now with this element selected, if you press the C key, it's automatically going to center this within your view, within your perspective, which is a very useful tool. Now we'll go back here. This will allow you to switch between absolute or relative grid orientation. So absolute has a grid in one position, and it's going to move your pieces according to that grid. Relative means when you select an element, all of the other elements are going to move with a grid relative to that element. So I think absolute is easier to use. It's a matter of personal preference, whatever you would like to use. There's also step rotation, which is the difference between individually stepping the rotations in fixed number of degrees, or just allowing it to move an infinite number of very fine degrees. And there's also things like the auto editing plane. There's part snapping, which we will worry about a little bit later when we have more elements out. Then if you go to the top left corner or the top right corner, you can adjust the granularity or the fineness or coarseness of your movements. So right now we're in rotate mode, so we're going to want to concern ourselves with this, and you can choose how fine you want your movements to be when you rotate an element. So there are keyboard shortcuts for this, so Control 1 will make it every 1 degree. So I'm going to click Control 1, and now I can move individual degrees for my element, which is kind of slow. So I can choose Control 2, which is now 5 degrees, Control 3, which is 15 degrees. You can go here and check out the rest of them. Control 4 is 22.5 degrees, and then Control 5 is a whole 30 degrees, which is the largest increment that they allow. There's also, if you go up here to the top left, for the move mode, so if I press, I'll just back out of this for a second, if I press M, we're in move mode. By default it's set to 10, 8, and 10 studs, and that's with key number 3. This is what I recommend that you keep it on. You don't necessarily need to play around with this too much. This is ideal because it evenly lines up with a lot of the Lego studs. You'll see when I put in another element. You can also make it smaller, and this will give you even more precision over the movement, but it'll take a little bit longer to put a Lego element in place. There's also fine, which is the smallest unit where you're moving it just individual, like 1/10 of a stud each time. And there's also large, which you press 4, and it's going to move it in very large increments. There's also these settings, which set the X, Y, and Z directions all the same. So 10, 10, 10 across for normal, 5, 5, 5 across for small. All of the functions that you can access through here also have keyboard shortcuts, and if you forget them, there's a little cheat sheet built into the software. So if you go up to View and then go to Editing Views, it shows you most of the keyboard shortcuts related to the functions that are found down here. So now you know just about everything there is to know about manipulating and moving an individual element. So now we can start clipping some elements together to start building something. So I'm going to right away go and change my movement to normal. So I'm going to click number 3, and I'm going to change it back to 15 degrees. So these were the default settings, if you can remember. And with this selected, I'm going to delete it because I want to start over. Back over here in the parts library, now I can select an element and drag it into my model to start building. So I'm going to choose black as my working color now, and I'll move this over into the model. See, we have the piece loaded and ready to go. Let's choose another element. Now you see you can go up and go into the different categories, or another option you can do is keep this here and click on another tab, so you can dedicate tab 1 to one type of parts, and then you can go to tab 2 and follow the same path and instead choose a different type of element. So let's say we want to choose a beam, and we can select that, and we'll make a silver beam. So there are a number of different beams you could choose from, pretty much anything that exists. We can drag this out here. Now let's say we want to get this to connect. So we'll use the controls, we'll put this in rotate mode, and I'll move this around until it's perpendicular to its original position. And then I'll go to top, press the T key, and then press the M key to move this again. And I'm going to adjust my view to get a better look at what I'm doing here. And then I can bring this down, and now the elements are interfacing with each other as so. So I was able to insert the axle into this beam, and we can keep going if we want. Now we can say choose a gear, so I'll open up another tab, go to Technic Parts, Gear, and let's put a gear on that axle that I placed. So I'll choose the color gold so it stands out. I'll choose one of these, and I can move this around. So I'll press T for top, go to R, and rotate. As you can see, you can actually place elements inside of other elements, which is something that LDD completely locked you out of doing. So if there's something that involves like bending of elements that you couldn't do with LDD, you can definitely do this with LDCAD. So now I'm going to press S, which is side, move, and I'm able to move this element around, and now it's attached to that axle on this beam here. As you're building, you'll see up here in the toolbar you have all of the normal tools that you would expect to find. So things like open an LDraw file, save and save as, and you also have undo buttons which undo individual actions, and a redo button if you want to redo and undo. You also have copy the selection, so right now I just have one element selected, so I can copy that and then paste it, and then I get another element just like it, and it's going to stay in the same orientation in the same grid here, and I'll just be able to move it around. And if I want, I can just click, and now I have control over things like moving, so FST, and rotating as so. So I can move that around if I want. And there's also I cut feature, paste, etc. Now there's one feature of LDCAD that's very special and unique that sets it apart from LDD, and that is the ability to divide the building of your model into steps. And what the steps do is either you can use directly in this software to make a rudimentary grouping of parts to get like a sort of like a building instruction effect, or you can export all of these steps into software called LPub and make actual Lego building instructions like the kind that you see on my website. And the controls for the steps are these 5 up here. Now as you're building, you may want to group a bunch of elements into a group and include those in just one step and then move on to another step. You're going to have to think sequentially when you're building. So let's say I have these 4 elements right here and I want these to be included in the very first step, and then I want to keep building but in another step. So what you're going to do is go up here, and this is the button to append a new building step after the last one, and you're going to click that. It might change your view when you click that, but now these 4 elements are locked into our first building step, and they're going to stay like that. So now it says we're on step 2 of 2, so if we continue building, we'll be adding new elements to the second step. So that's an important thing to note, is that when you hit append a new step, it makes that new step after whatever the existing components on the screen are. So let's add some axles. So I'll take out another axle and just put this here. So I'll rotate it, move it around until it interfaces where I want it to go. So let's say that's where I want that to go, and then I'll say clip on another gear somewhere here, so I can rotate that, move it around. So that's situated there, and let's say that's my completed second step, so I can click this again and we can keep working and we can make a third step. So let's add maybe like a green chrome gear into our model. So just get that attached there. And now you can look back at all of your individual steps. So if I go here, these are the original 4 elements that we added in the first step. We'll click this, which goes forward 1 step, and it adds the axle and the gear. And then click forward again, and it'll go to the third step, and it shows us what this completed model looks like. So that's just the basics of being able to use these steps. To give you a better sense of what this step function looks like with a more complete model, I opened up the Falcon again. So we can go up here and I press this and it'll show me the very first step. As you can see, it's just assembling the very core of the drivetrain, and then I'll click this and it'll show you moving step by step through each of the individual steps that I programmed into the model. And again, this is really important because it shows you a few steps at a time, so you can use this LDraw file as kind of like a rudimentary building instructions, or you can export this into software like LPub to make actual Lego quality building instructions from. So going through all the steps, this is what it looks like. And it's important when you're grouping steps that you just choose a few elements at a time, otherwise you'd be defeating the purpose of steps by making them look too overwhelming. Now you know all of the tools necessary to get started with building your own models from scratch in LDCAD. You know how to move the camera, manipulate pieces, connect pieces together, make steps, so on and so forth. However, if you're like me, you probably spent a good deal of time making models in LEGO Digital Designer before you learned how to do LDraw. And if you're converting from LDD into LDraw, you probably don't want to remake all of your LDD models again in this software. Thankfully, LDCAD has another really awesome trick up its sleeve. You can import models from LDD directly into LDCAD and edit them from there. So how you do this is open up LDD and choose a model. So here I have my very popular E-Rally car. You're going to go up here, go to File, Export Model, and you're going to choose a directory to save it in. I just have whatever directory this is. And you're going to, instead of exporting it as LXF, export it as an LDraw file or .ldr, and then you can hit save. And then when you go over back into LDCAD, go to open, and then go into whatever directory that you just saved that in, and open up that .ldr file that you just saved, and now your model opens up. It'll be mostly complete. Most likely, you're going to probably have to fill in a few pieces here and there in order to complete it, but of course this is much faster than individually piece by piece reassembling your model. And of course now you have all of the power to move, manipulate, edit different pieces and parts, change your model in whatever way you'd like, and now you have all of the power of LDCAD right at your fingertips, at your disposal. Thank you for watching my tutorial this week. If you haven't already, click here to check out my new book. It's called Building Smart LEGO MINDSTORMS EV3 Robots, and it's now available on Amazon. If you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe to my channel for more tutorials like this every Thursday. And if you have an idea for a tutorial, drop your suggestion in the comments section below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.